Greetings and welcome. Let me see. Yes, I have. I have sound. I can't check the. Okay, let's. Where are we at? Good. Greetings and welcome. My name is Jake Rayson. I am a forest gardener and a forest garden designer, and I am having to live stream from the sunny summer house. It's, who would have thought, the 3rd of November. It's absolutely sweltering. It's about 25 degrees in here. But there we go. That's climate change for you. And this is the regular monthly forest garden live stream that I do. I do a kind of structured one every month, the first Wednesday of the month at 10 o'clock, and then I do other stuff as well. So I've got a real-time workshop first 2 Mondays of the month, and then I do outdoor, me and out in the forest garden, noodling around, doing things, talking about stuff, and various other talks and bits and pieces going on. So that's my that's what I am doing. And today it's a hell of a rig. I've had to get a power cable from the house and set up the laptop on the table and keyboard, and I have the slideshow on my mobile, which is why this quality's not that good. But that's all fine and good. So there we go. Without further ado, I'm going to get started in talking about paths in the forest garden, and this is I call them multifunction paths in a forest garden because I think it's important to always kind of realise that the features that you have. They in a garden, in a living space, really, that they can do multiple things. That you're not just having one thing doing. You don't have just one feature doing one thing. And a case in point for a forest garden, for example, it would be a windbreak hedge, where you have a living windbreak hedge which breaks the wind, which protects plants, but it also provides habitat for wildlife, a food source for wildlife, and a food source for humans. And so it's doing, quite a few functions at the same time. So this is why multifunction paths, because paths do the same thing. So without further ado, let's see if it works. I am quite amazed. I haven't got chat, I'm afraid, so I can't do any of the chat stuff. But if it does work, that'll be amazing. Here we go. Yes, look at it. Look at the slideshow slide. So it's a funny old topic actually, because I kind of didn't really realise how important paths are until I started designing a lot of forest gardens and working on a lot of spaces. And then you do realise that they've got some key functions, and it's kind of really, really interesting. That's something so simple. You go, it's a path. How hard can it possibly be? But it has so many. There's different layers and levels and degrees of nuance as well. So what I'll first of all do is look at the path functions. There's 3 functions for a path: access, definition, defining an area, and acting as a barrier to plant growth. So that's the functions, and then I'll look at the grass material, the path material. So grass, wood chip, and hogging as three examples here. So yeah, I will really want to talk about a fantastic book called Tending the Wild by M. Cat Anderson. And I don't think I can't get it on the screen because I can't. Yeah, but it's just kind of super interesting how it works out. Essentially, it's looking at 10,000, 12,000 years of sustainable human existence in California, and it's about the relationship between humans and nature, basically. And it doesn't have to be what we've got at the moment. And I think it's an awful lot of lessons to be learned from it. And particularly, talking about paths, for example, you can over professionalize, you can overthink things, but it's worth looking at the essence of things as well. So access, I think, is critical. When I first started forest gardening, I wanted everything edible. I wanted everything totally no maintenance, and I just wanted stuff to grow and me to pick it. Yeah, it was really kind of self-centered view of forest gardening. And I think what is really kind of key is this idea of a relationship with the garden, a relationship with nature, a relationship with land. So it's an interplay, and that actually you need to be out there. It's not, you can't call yourself a gardener if you're not gardening, and gardens need humans and humans need gardens, and it's more than simply wild. It's just not just about the wild, the nature as a separate thing. It's about them coming together. So I think it's quite, profound stuff, but quite important as well. And that relates to all elements in a forest garden. I'd argue in any garden, and it relates to paths too. So we'll come on to that. So let's get on to the path functions. Oh, sorry, wrong button. Hey. So path functions: access, definition, and a barrier. And it sounds really, really obvious, but you do need to have access to your plants, and paths provide that access. A garden's about a whole load of different things, but a garden really, really, really is about plants. I would say they're kind of high up there on the list of things. I saw some garden designers' work, and they'd won an award, and it was just a vast amount of wood and a vast amount of concrete and a vast amount of seating and a couple of plants. I'm just thinking, hey, that's just like a room outside. I don't know who. Yeah, there was this idea of the room. Oh, who was it? It was the venerated garden designer, whose name I can't remember. Oh, I've got a book of his. Oh, he's kind of very, very well known. Completely gone out of my head. But he's talking about the garden as a room. And maybe possibly we got it the wrong way round. It should be the other way round. The room as a garden, perhaps. So I don't know. So yeah, access to plants, absolutely critical. And as part of this, excuse me, very thirsty. As part of this access, I think there's a couple of different reasons why. So you want to observe what is going on. Annie Kelsey is forest gardener lives up in Welshpool and up that way, and she talks an awful lot about being in the garden, actually just being in the garden and observing and seeing what's going on and being part of it, and then intervening when you need to intervene, when you feel there's a need to intervene, not rushing ahead going with a preformed plan. You actually spend time there and you're observing and you're being. So that's a big part of it, that if you have a path, I don't know, for example, I want to move some Turkish rocket. I haven't got around to it yet. And I know that I won't just move the Turkish rocket. There's some Jerusalem artichoke that needs to be moved. There's some hedge woundwork that needs to be moved as well. And so there's an awful lot of things that you do. And you go, well, whilst I'm here, I'll just quickly hoe the wood chip path. And there's a bit of grass, I know, around. But out. Ron's come in. Out. Come, not in here. Ronnie. Oh, God. Out. Ronnie, out. Oh, come. Oh, sorry. Right, come here. Come here. You come in here then. Come here. Come. Right here. Right, stay. You stay there. If it's not the builders, it's the dog. I'll show. Let's get Ron up on the screen. There he is. There's Ronnie. Wet. Oh dear. You stay down there. You're not supposed to be in here, are you? Where was I? Observations. Yes. So that you go out and you do one little job, and there's a whole lot of other jobs that you do as well, and that's part of it. It's part of you actually being there, and then you're there. Then you do stuff, and I think that's a much, rather than having I must do this and I must do that, it's actually being there and then seeing how you kind of get on with gardening. So very much of gardening is doing what needs to be done. You don't know what needs to be done until you know what needs to be done. There's another saying about weed when you don't need to weed, then you won't need to weed, and it's the same thing. I'll just pick up a bit of some grass growing in a bed. I'll just hoik it out, no big deal. If you don't do it at all, there's massive great big clumps of grass, and it becomes a job rather than something that you're just doing anyway. So the dog's on the children's mat. Anyway, so yes, so that's kind of observations and actually being out there, and paths are a really, really important part of it, that you make it easy for people to go out, then they will go out. And I'll come on to accessibility. It's kind of about accessibility really, and that's in a broad sense. So you make paths wide enough for people, flat enough, of a material that people with different abilities can access. you know, it's all kind of part of the same thing. So very much depends upon who's there and what you've got. But I just think there's some people I know of who've got a permaculture holding, and they've done a fantastic job. And apparently I haven't been there, but friends of friends, and apparently the land is very, very steep, and they've got to go down a kind of steep load of steps with a rope ladder, and to go and do the harvesting of the vegetables, and then you've got to hike them all the way back up. And you go, that's great if you're in your 20s, 30s, but you know, my knees are going, and you want to make the site accessible long term for as many people as possible. I think this is a whole other lecture in its own right, but accessibility is kind of really important. And then part of this then is and harvesting as well. You want to have access to the plants to be able to harvest them. So, for example, it's like the kind of ground cover that you grow underneath sweet chestnuts to make sure that your sweet chestnut harvest doesn't disappear into 40-50 centimetre deep ground cover, that you've got a ground cover that, I don't know, dies back at that time of year, and then you can find the sweet chestnuts, or you've got a low ground cover under the sweet chestnuts, or you have it grass and you keep it mown, whatever it is, but you need to actually access the harvest as well. And the kind of handy little hint as well is veg beds no wider than 1.2 metres. I was talking to a neighbour actually who is setting up kind of like a market garden, and I can't remember how wide he said it was, but I think it's less than a metre wide for his beds. And I think that's, you know, it makes a lot of sense. Actually, you kind of go, oh, the path will eat away at the productive space, but the space becomes more productive the better the access that you have to it. So no greater than 1.2 metres. You know, I'd say possibly less. I made raised beds when I first moved here, not really knowing what I was doing. And I made them 1.5 metres. They go, oh yeah, I got a massive great big raised bed. And they go, no, because that actually dissuades you from weeding and dissuades you from harvesting. So better to have a smaller bed that is more productive. And then it's easier to weed and it's easier to add organic matter to it and all the rest of it. And then another kind of very handy hint as well is mower width paths. Rather like when you're going foraging, the kind of standard measurement for foragers is the plastic bag. It's the same kind of thing. So you have like this recipe calls for a bag of nettles, or get a bag of hawthorns, or whatever it is. It's the same thing for the paths. For measuring paths, you use the width of your mower as the standard as a standard width, because then if it's a one width path, which is kind of just like a little narrow access path and it's a grass path, then you know you can just go once up it and that's it. You don't need to come back down again. Or it's a 2 width path, then you kind of go up and then you come back down and that's a path done. If it's a 2.5 width path, that means you've got to do 3 trips. So it kind of adds to the maintenance. So if you're doing it, I would just kind of say you don't really need much wider than 2 widths, 2 mower widths. And then for kind of smaller grass paths, that one is fine. And then definition. Now this really is important. Excuse me, I got hiccups. When you have I'm doing a workshop next week for a wildlife trust, which is very exciting. And it's a forest garden design workshop. And I think the paths are really, really important part of this, because it's the chance that you have to define the areas. So I think it's almost like you try in the design stage, the whole point of having a design, whether it's a piece of paper and you're scribbling out trees or just ideas where things can go, or whether it's a full-on CAD drawing that you're sharing with a group of half a dozen people around the world, or whatever it is, it's the same kind of idea that you try things out. You try out the trees in different places, you try out the structures in different places. I'm gonna get out the sun. Then once you've tried these different things out, it's the paths that define the areas. So paths are an invaluable tool. It's how you get to the area, but also defines an area as well. So I like to use it as part of the design process. Out of there, sorry, not on the kids stuff. Right. So I like to use it as part of the design process. So this is a photo of a CAD plan that I was doing for a house in Poland, a forest garden I was doing for a new build house in Poland, and it was just this idea of you sketch the paths on the plan, and then that kind of feels about right, and then try out the different paths as well. There's a term called desire paths. If you press P, will it work? Will it work? Will it work? Here we go. Oh yes. Oh yes. I don't know if that's going to be that's not bad. Press P, and then you get the notes come up. That is cool. There is a thing called desire paths or cow paths, which you might have heard of, and it's this idea of this is where people want to go, this is how people are using the space, and then think about try paths in different situations. If you're starting off with grass, a mown path is actually a really good idea, because you can try out mown paths in different areas and see how people use them, or people cut corners, or people don't actually go up that end very much, or where the main kind of traffic is, and so it's all kind of really, really exciting mix, and paths are part of that mix as well. So try out different paths in different situations. Okay, and then my favourite thing is to mark out the paths as well. Once you've got a good idea with a mown path, but is to mark paths out with bits of bamboo and then string, like not plastic string, but butcher's string, that kind of stuff, which decomposes, like white string, so you can see it as well, and that gives you that's a nice way of marking stuff out. Beth Chatto, the famous gardener, she used old hose pipe, but I found it maybe there were floppier hose pipes, I found it impossible to work with, so I use bamboo and cotton string type stuff to mark stuff out with. And that's a photo of a desire path. And then, is it finally? Yes, it is finally. Finally, on the old function side is a barrier. So you probably, I can't really zoom that in. I'm sorry, I can't really zoom things in here. Can I? No, I won't bother. I might break it. This is a photo of the Forest Garden Nuttery, which is like an area which was going to be a meadow, but it was too much work to keep as a meadow. Brambles taken over it, and rather like bolting the stable door once the horse, closing the stable door once the horse is bolted, I have put in a perimeter path around it. And the whole idea of a perimeter path is it's access to the perimeter, and it stops bramble. So you kind of keep you've got a perimeter path. That if you've got the large expanse, I would use grass, and then you keep that mown, and then you can just keep bramble from coming out. What's happened in that field is the brambles come over unchecked. There's no path around the outside, and now there's that whole area. There's like 200 square meters, which just needs to be debrambled by hand. I need to dig out the brambles by hand this winter, which will be a fun job. So yeah, a perimeter path is really, really useful. And it's kind of useful in most, I'd say useful in pretty much most gardens anyway, like at least some sort of access around the perimeter, so you can check your fencing, you can check the edge of it, you can see what's going on from the back. Not necessarily like a main through route, but access around the perimeter, really, really important. And it stops bramble from tip layering. And the paths also can be used to keep plants in check as well. So if you have we've got here like horse mint, Mentha longifolia, and it's in a triangle of mown grass paths, and it's kept in check by the triangle. It's just starting to take off now, really. It's fantastic, late kind of flowering. Bees absolutely love it. Kind of really good, quite high 60 centimetre ground cover. 60 centimetres, maybe taller actually, maybe 80 centimetres. And it's just it's kept in check. Likewise, we've got a couple of bamboos in the other forest garden, and they're surrounded. They've got an autumn olive on one side, big, which gets about 5 meters high by 5 meters wide, and they have grass paths on the other two sides, and so the bamboo is kept in check by the mown path and by a kind of a shrub. So yeah, it's a way of keeping plants in check. Okay, let me move on to the path materials. Grass, wood chip and hogging. Excuse me. So grass is great. Grass, all the advantages of grass. Have I got notes on here? The pros of the cons. Um, Grass is hard wearing. It kind of keeps out other plants. It grows relentlessly and will spread and will form, form a mat. It is high maintenance, and you do have to mow it. If you've got the time, then it's great to be able to mow it. Oh, there's a chap, Bruce Lark, over in Moyler Grove, in Pembrokeshire, a really nice guy who's got a forest garden, and apparently he sides his grass paths, which is great if you've got the setup and the time to do that. That's fantastic. Otherwise, you mow it with a lawn mower, and if you're doing that, you do need to kind of keep on top of it. Otherwise, it grows out of hand and will get big and tufty, and then bramble will start coming in. So it is high maintenance. You do need to mow it every few weeks or so. What I have found very useful if you've got larger land is to have a wheeled brush cutter. We've got a wheel brush cutter and a lawnmower, but the wheel brush cutter is great because we've got like about 6 acres under cultivation, and that's a lot of land, and it can get out of hand very quickly. So if you've got a wheel brush cutter, it's the best thing that we've got. I wanted to do it all by hand, but don't have the time. But the wheel brush cutter enables you to kind of keep the grass down. If the grass gets to a certain level, it keeps the grass down. So it's a really, really good thing to do. Grass paths, and because it takes so much time and effort to make other types of paths, if you've got a large area, a grass path is what you'll end up with. Now, grass path, have I got anything else about... Oh, boundary plants here, good. I was going to say, the problem with grass paths is like all the pros of grass paths is that they will just keep on growing and growing and growing, and you get grass creep where a grass path will go into a border. So I don't know if you can see on this photograph here, there's some boundary plants I use. So any well-established bed will stop grass from getting in if it's well established. If it's little, then it won't. The grass will just kind of come in, and you've got to keep yanking it out. And there is particular plants as well which are kind of good clumping. They're not like spreading like... Well, mint will act as a boundary plant, but it will take over the whole bed. Whereas some geraniums, there's a big root cranesbill, which is not a native, unfortunately, but it has been naturalised. And it kind of forms massive, great big clumps. There's also wild geranium maculatum, which is from North America, same kind of thing. Forms kind of big clumps, and it's kind of quite easy. It's easy to manage, doesn't spread so much, I think. I'm not sure about the maculatum. Anyway, so they're manageable, and then you can mow right up to underneath them, and you can mow the grass, and it's kind of robust enough. And lemon balm, I would have thought that lemon balm in the right situation would do a similar thing. It'd be good to find out more kind of plants for that kind of idea of like a good old barrier between the grass and a bed. Looking at some native alternatives, but that's another project for another day. So boundary plants, I would say, very, very kind of handy. But to be honest, I think boundary plants are good if you've got a grass path and then you've got stuff behind it which you're kind of moving around a lot. So if you've got you've got a bed and it's got a load of Jerusalem artichoke in, and you're constantly, you're pulling up Jerusalem artichoke when you're digging them up, and then the soil gets disturbed and the grass can come in because there's no ground cover. Then it's like if you've got boundary plants on one side of the bed, then that will stop the grass from coming in. So that's a kind of good situation. Here I've got it by the Who'd You Watch Me Flip, by the polytunnel, and I've also grown creeping buttercup, which is an experiment. That should be quite fun in the winter, see how that's come on. Because it's a bed that I'm not really using, I just thought it'd be interesting to put in a native annoying creeping buttercup, Ranunculus repens. Anyway, and then for more delicate areas, like I was saying, around I've got raised beds. When we moved in here, as I was saying before, I've got annual veg beds. We're having annual vegetables. This year I made the decision not to grow any more annual vegetables, which is a bit of a relief really, so I can concentrate on trying out different perennial vegetables. I've grown tomatoes and chilies, which are kind of annual, but trying to move over to perennial stuff. But in the beds, I have different experiments going on. So I've got a bed with elephant garlic in it, and and I've got another bed with potato onions in, and another bed with Welsh onions and perennial leeks. And I want to stop the grass from coming in, so I've used wood chip between the paths, because otherwise if I had grass paths, the grass would just creep straight into the bed. Because they're even though I'm trying out different ground cover, I've got like a Taiwanese bramble and a Nepalese raspberry ground covers getting established. Even though I've got that, grass would be a pain in the ass because it would just kind of keep on coming in. So I've got wood chip around the perennial veg beds. Oh, and that's the point as well about the paths and about beds. There's a chap, Alan Carter, really really good website, foodforest.garden, and he's written a book as well, which I haven't read yet, which I must get onto, and he talks about a couple of things he talks about. Ground cover's overrated, and it kind of is, because you've got ground cover plant, but as soon as you get a herbaceous perennial or you get shrubs established, then you don't need ground cover plants. But I would say it depends on the situation. And the other thing he says is straight beds are much easier to maintain, which I would agree with as well. That if you've got perennial veg in a straight bed, you don't need curves, and it depends on the situation. Sometimes you can get away with it, but straight beds can be quite a lot easier to manage. And if you've got wood chip paths, then you do need to have a grass barrier. As you can see here, I've got a bit of 6x1 old plank that I've got kicking around, and I've just made a barrier between the wood chip path and the grass. And the idea is I can mow that, and that'll keep the grass from going in. I'm sure it'll try and go over the top, but that gives me a bit more of a barrier, makes my life a little bit easier. And then we need to hoe the wood chip to weed it as well. So every once in a while I'll keep the hoe out in the polytunnel, and every once in a while I'll just hoe the area down and hoe the wood chip and kind of get rid of stuff that I don't really want there growing there, so it makes it a bit easier to walk up and down. And then top it up as well. It will need topping up every now and again, every year or so, because it will compost down. What I have found is that wood chip, in my experience, wood chip composes much faster and will break down much faster, whereas bark is more inert. And so I use bark generally on beds and areas where I'm putting ground covering, because it provides cover for longer, and then I'll use wood chip on paths. But if I've only got wood chip, then I'll use wood chip as a mulch everywhere. But it depends, if I can get hold of both: wood chip on paths, bark on beds. Blimey, time is flying by. So hogging path. This is something like this is a screenshot from John Little, Grass Roof Company. He's a brownfield gardener and a hole digger, and I love his work because he's got ornamental gardens, and he's using waste material like brick rubble, and he had a pile of sand or some gravel, and he's made a hogging path, and this is a hogging path. It's compacted clay, sand, and gravel. It's used a lot in generally the south of England and around National Trust properties. It's not strong enough for vehicle access, but it's good for a hard-wearing path for humans. And he's also John Little has also got it as a wildlife habitat. So I'm not sure how he's done it actually. I've emailed him asking him about his proportions, because I can't find much information about it. We've got the builders in today, which is why I'm here, and they're putting the brick rubble, the stone rubble down on the. There's an area just down by the Dutch Span, and I want to get some hogging and put some hogging in there and flatten the area out as well. And it's a sustainable alternative. So rather than having a concrete path, you have a hogging path. It's kind of pretty much impermeable to water, so you do need to make a profile for it. And then obviously, like if you're making a concrete path, you need to have hardcore for drainage underneath, and the same thing for a hogging path. You need to have a firm foundation for it as well. So I haven't made it. I don't know. I've asked quite a few people. I've asked a couple of different builders, and I've asked landscape designers and stuff, and not that many people have heard of it. So and hardly anyone I know. I don't know anyone locally who's been using it. So be interesting little experiment. So those are things. And on that kind of note as well, I think it's worth looking at accessibility for people. When you're creating a garden, level it's a lot easier for access if things are level. So this is why we can ask him to create a level area down there, and it's easier to use level areas. If it's on a slope, it's it's not, it is what it is. But for seating and for eating and for working, level areas are much easier. So when you're at the beginning stage, and when you're young enough and have the energy and energy to do it, level everything out, so it's a lot easier to use, and that makes it more accessible. And this is a whole other topic, but I think making things accessible, if you make it accessible for everybody, it makes it easier for everybody. It's easier to work on a level surface than on a slope. Even though you can do it when you're younger, it's easier for when you're older. So invest in that infrastructure, and the same throughout the whole of the garden as well. Make it easier for access, and put the right paths in where you can, and do think for the future and think about other people. And it's like you're thinking about paths for people, and you're thinking about infrastructure for the whole ecosystem as well. There we go. So I hope that's useful. Is that the end? It's the end. And I'm going to do a Zoom. Meeting now. If anyone's interested to talk about stuff, I'm absolutely sweltering, and I shall hop over there now. Unfortunately, I can't access the YouTube chat. So if there is anybody who can paste the link in and the chat, that would be great. No, I can't. Yeah, I can't really do it. I can't do it. There we go. Anyway, hope that's useful. See you next month. I'm going to be talking about dead hedges next month. And yes, and then next Monday I've got the second part of my real-time workshop, which is all about, well, it's about planting stuff. There we go. Goodbye for now.